And welcome back to Miniature Dragon Comic Review, coming to you live from Seattle, Washington. As always, I'm your host for the evening, Daniel Doc Gentry. But with me today is the one and only Alex from Miniature Dragon Comics. Hello, Alex.
Hello, Doc. Thank you for having me today.
We get a break from Woody, so it's already been more productive than normal. I'm just
We
kidding.
actually started on time.
Look at us. We love you, Woody. We're just kidding. What I wanted to do today was originally we are going to do the second set of Rat Queens, and we were going to go through that, which we may cover a little bit today. But I wanted to talk about Rat Queens and jump into the relation of tabletop gaming. I asked a question when we had our first guest on, which was how much tabletop gaming they did. And it was really quick because they didn't have a lot of time. But I've noticed this trend of creators of comic books and their tabletop gaming. And as I look into more and more of them, I realize that there's very few storytellers in comic books who don't also play some kind of tabletop game. Um, have you talked to many people that are the story writers of comic books, and have you seen something different than I have with this?
No, actually, I definitely want to say between going to conventions, checking out other people on YouTube and Facebook, various other social media, and just going to like places where creative people are, um, there is a good number of not just writers, storytellers in the regards of call it writer, storyteller, uh, dungeon master, game master, whatever you want to call it, but artists, people that are in the creative field that do some level of tabletop, board game, or something interactive video game based stuff, like even something as the level of like The Sims, or where you have your particular character with this online presence and your avatar is doing something. And it's a really interesting part, but it's like there's a YouTuber by the name of HC Brown, and she talks about if you want to make interesting characters, she talks about, picking up a role-playing book and kind of doing some creations of characters. And she does art. But
It's just one of those things that I talked to a couple of creators. You've introduced me to a ton, but now that I've started going to some of these conventions with you guys to help out, I've started talking to people, and it amazes me because I've always wondered why there was in every con that I've ever seen and been to, no matter what it is, there's a gaming section. No matter what the con's for, there's a gaming section, and I am a huge gamer. That's where DM and DM Doc comes from. It was just something that kind of got hooked. Was Doc is from me being in the military as a medic, and then DM Dungeon Master, so DM Doc just kind of stuck. And I just realized I'm big in tabletop gaming, and I love it. And Alex, you're part of some of my games, and I'm a storyteller. I like to create the worlds and do it, but I'm not opposed to using pre-written material. But there's something about that, and when I talk to comic book creators that played tabletop, which most of them that I've talked to do, there's this line where they all feel the same way I do, and it's why they play the tabletop, and they say it helps the storytelling. Why are we talking about this? And I'll tell you why. Because I started getting into the Rat Queens, and with Woody not here, I obviously was like, maybe I should go look a little bit about like where these come from, why these do, stuff like that. And it's very interesting to me. So what I found out was that Rat Queens wasn't always an Image comic thing. It wasn't by Image Comics originally. Its first publication was, but the creator was going to do a Kickstarter, GoFundMe, and do it 100% on his own, full indie style. Excuse me, I've been everybody in the house has been sick. I think I'm starting to catch it.
mm,
I'm looking. I'm sorry. Curtis Weib. I'm sorry. More than welcome to come on the show and correct me. I would appreciate that. Who creates this, started this, and said, I'm going to do this series on my own. I'm going to raise the money to do this. And 1 week before he put his Kickstarter out, after making the announcement it was going to happen, Image Comics picked him up and said, no, let's do this full publication with the backing of Image Comics. And then it's been up and down. So, and like I said, it was really interesting. I was just getting ready to do Woody's part. You know what I mean? I was getting ready to they wrote this comic, blah, blah, blah. So first off, the reason Curtis writes this comic at all is because of his love of tabletop gaming. And not just Dungeons and Dragons, which when you say tabletop, that's what a lot of people say. And he wanted to do something with a twist. So he described it as, I looked it up because I didn't want to misquote. The concept is Lord of the Rings meets Bridesmaids.
Okay, I was not expecting that. And that is awesome. I mean, that is a fanfic that apparently exists, and he was able to do it, and that is awesome. And that is like something where like the creativity of taking multiple IPs and blending it together to make your own thing is, exactly what this book really does feel to me like. Because, I mean, it's like I see the inspirations of Dungeons & Dragons, Call of Cthulhu, like that version that they did of Shadowrun, or a Shadowrun-like world.
Right. And
so many others, but like the Lord of the Rings and the Bridesmaid, I mean, now it really makes me want to have like a D20 supplement, or like some open game license source where it's Elrond and Frodo and all these others and the Bridesmaids characters battling for dresses or something.
So the Kingdom's Heart version of this. Yeah, that's so it was funny because, like I said, I got into this just to do Woody's part, and it got me thinking, which is when I contacted you and said, hey, let's do this episode a little differently. So first off, if you read We're At Queens like I do, you realize that the art has changed over time. And it's because different people were doing the art. I didn't know that, to be honest with you. I always thought it was difficult as an artist to draw the same thing over and over again in different situations, but have the exact same concept, and that's what I thought had happened over time. Turns out that the original artist, something happened. I'm not going to bring up anything here, but they ended up getting removed from it. And then I'm not sure if they went to another artist or it actually went to a webcomic series for a while. There's like almost I want to say 6 months to a year where there's no print. It's just webcomics. And then when they got another artist and brought it back to print, they said, okay, they pulled a Disney and said, okay, all that webcomics is legend. It didn't really happen. Until later on, they actually referenced it in the comics and brought it back in, which is kind of cool. This is amazing to me. And if you haven't read Rat Queens after our last one, I urge you to go out and read Rat Queens. This is one of my favorite comics, and it's probably the comic that got me back into comics.
Besides Saga?
No, so Saga was the comic I was reading. And so there's a difference here. I would have read Saga whether I got back into comic books or not, because to me, Saga, it was a really amazing story. It did not make me want to pick up another comic book and read it. I don't know if that makes sense to you. Saga was just
I get what you mean by.
Where Rat Queens brought me back to... I think it's just the old school, because I used to read comics as a kid. We've been through this a bunch of times. And then I stopped reading comics for a very long time. And just recently have I got back into reading comics. Rat Queens, when we did Rat Queens, up to that point, that was episode 6. Holy crap, that was like almost a year ago. In episode 6, I said, all right, let's do blah, blah, blah. Up to that point, we're reviewing, and the only comics I'm reading besides Saga are the comics that Woody and you are giving me to read for the things, and I'm doing my part.
Hey, Woody.
Well,
Woody is the one that does the majority. I will say every once in a while, but he's the one that masterminds and picks.
It's true, but you do have some influence. And I was reading the comics and blah blah blah, and what brings us to the important part, which I pick up Rat Queens, which Woody's like, you're gonna love this comic because I'm a big tabletop guy. So, and I rolled my eyes at him because every game book that or every comic I picked up that was about tabletopping did not catch the essence of tabletopping.
Well, I think it becomes a different kind of thing. Like, before we got connected with you, we were doing a show with Keenan, and we did a review of, if I'm not mistaken, about Pathfinder. The art was lovely. I mean, really great level. I mean, they definitely had an A game. But as story-wise, it felt like more of a, okay, here's this module. Here's, like, I'm going to open up this page. The beholder or the treant or the orc or whatever else that you're doing in this dungeon, this is the part that you see. So you have visuals of what's happening in the module.
Okay. Yeah, I know.
At least that was the opinion that I had.
So I read Pathfinder outside of you guys, and yeah. I gave it away instantly to one of the kids because I wanted to get back into tabletop, and I liked Pathfinder, and I thought it was a good idea. And again, did not catch the essence of role play gaming, which is so everybody together writing a story together. You know, the DM is the narrator, but everybody else plays their part and does their thing. And, you know, it's, I mean, you do you with gaming. If you guys are listening to this, you do you. Don't listen to, Doc said this, so I'm going to. But my games are a little bit more in depth. If you don't pay attention, you don't play notes, it's going to be a long campaign because you're going to miss something. You're not going to get it. And I'm not going to railroad you to the story. And it's just the way I am. You're in an open world and you're playing. And that's what Rat Queens feels like to me. There is things going on, but they're doing their own things. And then, you know, you get out of the first book into the second book. And I'm trying to remember the second book because I'm trying not to get ahead. I'm trying to stay true to what's going on here. But there's the big bad, there's the little things. But I love the attitudes. And this would be like the perfect session where people got into character. And so I started thinking about it, like how many of these kind of things are games. So I started thinking about different games, and here's how I'm going to relate this. So if you want to play as the Rat Queens, I suggest you go and pick up any game. There's games out there you can do this, and you could play Rat Queens, believe it or not. So in Rat Queens, they say what they are. It's a cleric and necromancer, a fighter, a rogue, and I'm missing one.
But, let's see. Yeah, Betty is the rogue.
Hold on, let me grab the book.
Okay.
No, they're only 4 because I'm thinking of when Braga joins. Sorry. So they have these 4, and they go out and they do these quests and blah 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 blah, and it's great. And they come back to town and they party, which, you know, I thought was interesting. But I mean, what I got at it was how the two worlds actually collide is where I wanted to go with this. Because as I talk to creators, they all play tabletop. But I started thinking about, because I can story tell, DM, GM, whatever you want to call it, 159 different editions and different games. And so I have a lot of them rolling around in here, and I go, wow, that would be really cool as a Fate Core game, or that would be super awesome as a Shadowrun game, or that would be great as a D&D game. And so
I think I get what you're talking about. Like, I've noticed it also as being somebody that's not only does art, but also does tabletop. There are certain properties out there where it's like, I enjoy this. And I want to either emulate it within me running as the game master, or like I want certain aspects of my character to have this attributes. And there are some game mechanics where it's like, yeah, that's great, but you want to be a full conversion cyborg. Well, it's going to be difficult in certain aspects of playing it in Star Wars. And then there's other times where it's like these games really lend to the capability of having the character, the concept that you want to be inspired by.
Well, and you guys make a comic series, Counter May, isn't or not Counter May?
Well, we do make Countermay, which was a property based off of role playing from a group by the name of Zombie Orpheus Entertainment, and they do role playing based shows and whatnot.
But no, you do one that is role. It's a Shadowrun game that I think somebody was playing, and then you guys created a comic book.
Cyber Symbiosis.
So I love that, by the way, Cyber Symbiosis. I know Woody probably would be super upset. Well, he'd be happy we're talking about it, but upset that we're about to do this. I love this because I was thinking about it, was like, you could read Cyber Symbiosis and go, I want to play in that world. Take the notes that are on the bottom of each page, use that to create the world and start your own Shadowrun game. And that it was based on Shadowrun. I know that's where it started as the story, and I'm not saying that it's a Shadowrun comic book. It's not. They took the story of the game they were playing and created this comic book out of it, which is a great concept and is amazing. And Rat Queens was kind of the same concept as I was looking into it, which the story is what brings me back to Rat Queens. The drawing is beautiful. The art is great. The lettering has always been dead on, and there's some unique things in there really cool, like when she's talking to her patron and the patron speaks a really weird language. Yeah. Or even when they're casting spells, they do the lettering, and like, so it looks different.
Yeah, and I gotta say, it's like, it feels in that spirit of Tolkien. Like, Tolkien was known, besides being the professor that he was a linguist. And, like, you know, his creation of, what was it? Elven script, Orcish, and the various things that he did, you know, feels like a real influence of this. Yeah. You know, where it's like, this feels like the magic has the rules of, like, how these letters are put together, opposed to, okay, I'm going to scribble some stuff on here. This is magic now. And so
my dog wanted to be part of the show. Sorry.
Oh. I hope didn't tick you off.
No.
It could be rough.
I heard, yeah, that's what I heard. So, but the thing is with this, I think that out of all of the ones that are done, and we did a Warhammer 40K one, which is still beautiful, amazing, and it follows the concept of 40K, which is great. This one here, though, until I read that it was about Dungeons and Dragons, I couldn't nail it down to you. And I thought that was what was great.
So, when you did your research, Doc, so it is classic Dungeons and Dragons, or one of the...
I don't know that. I know it's Dungeons and Dragons.
So they didn't say, like, if it was a particular, like, inspired by this type of edition or this type of aspect.
Not that I found. And it wasn't a game that they played. They just wanted to write the book. And we've talked about this before, but I found it in my research too, was I said this is the perfect combination of, if you want to create a utopian environment where everybody is not judged for who they are, and you know, you have tons of different people, you know, from LGBTQ to people that are what do they call, the normative, whatever. I don't like the titles, and I don't like banners. That's my personal problem. That's why I have an issue with this, because be you is what I've always said. This really is an epitome of that. And so they not only do they get that right, which is what tabletop and nerdism is accepting of all people, of who they are, where they are, and like, so you don't talk about it, but you just know about it and you're cool with it, and people just sit down and they do this thing. I forgot where I was going exactly, but it is the perfect, and this is the only one I've ever read that is a perfect combination of the game itself and getting a story across. And like I said, the story in this has been great. I don't think it's been weaker in some points, but it has never been a weak story. And I think that's hard to say for a lot of comic books. Even
Oh no, I get you, and I think it's kind of one of those levels of it follows a slice of life, but it's the interesting part of it's still an adventure. But that's what's the odd part about it. So it's that kind of like you said, the Lord of the Rings meets the bride's part.
That wasn't me.
And
That's the creator. That's how the creator
okay,
described it.
um, but the point of like you got this adventure going on, but unlike most adventures where it's cut to the action, maybe a little downtime, but then it needs to go back into the action. This actually has them interacting as individuals. Like the characters dealing with their past relations or current relations. Like I thought it was great of seeing, I come from this society, I cut my beard because I want to do something else than be that stereotypical dwarf. And it had a change on the society of dwarves where like other dwarven women actually started cutting their beards.
I've been reading. I'm in 4, so I don't want to ruin this for anybody because I've been reading ahead. I don't know how far Rat Queens is. I just when I go to the comic book store, I pick up the next one. It was something in there that was said that I was like, "Wow, this is beautiful," and it was her brother when you talk about the beard. Actually says in one line that he's envious of her for what she's done. And I was like, what a beautiful thing. And the comic book itself is beautiful up to this point, big into backstories and stuff like that. But it really brings, like, I wish my tabletop game was like this. I have one that I DM now that you're in, and I'm not, this isn't me doing anything. I'm just saying that I wish that there was more role-playing at the table and less that I have to do to make that game happen, because I would love for our game to flow like this comic book does. And I think that, and I'm going to say this opposite, I don't think this game really, or that the game influences this comic book more than I think reading this comic book influences people's games. If you're not reading Rat Queens, even if you're not reading anything else, this whole series is absolutely amazing. Gorgeous storyline, lettering. There is nothing in this that's not collectible, but it's also an amazing comic, period. No matter what matrix you use, whether it's ours or a different thing. And I mean, that's kind of my final thought, and I'll kind of leave it at that, but it was just, it's the one thing that hit it when I told you I wanted to do this whole episode on this crossover. Because if you're doing one world and you're not doing the other, then you really don't understand the whole concept of all the worlds. But if you read this comic and it's like, wow, that's interesting, I would love for, do something like that, then you come on over and join us for some tabletop. Because it is what it is. But I just love how much it was influenced from tabletop. That is what blew me out of the water. Do you have final thoughts?
Uh, more than just basically agreeing with you. So thinking about like some of the statements that you said, one thing that I wanted to add was I think it was when we had Keenan as a guest. I forget what comic it was, but I feel like there's a point about bringing this up is, so the difference of like Betty and a statement that you made earlier about, different levels of sexuality and things of that nature. I feel like with her story part and, showing her relationships with the girlfriends that she has really works really organically. And it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like any of the scenes are just these unnecessary sex scenes. And it's like I made mention before of whatever comic that it was like, okay, I don't care if it was Jean Grey and Scott Summers, Cyclops and the Phoenix, boning each other, or whatever other character it is. it's the simple fact of like, does it help within the relationship of the characters? Does it help within the story? And I feel like the aspect of this book shows a great detail of like what the relationships are within the characters, not only as teammates, but their own personal relationships, what they're willing to do, what they do. You know, are they willing to use magical drugs to get high? Are they fighting for something that they believe in, by cutting off their beard and getting rid of that normal tradition? Do they divorce somebody and try to get away from a cult? Do they do certain things like hoard candy and tell a dragon, what's the size of your particular hoarded item that you enjoy? And there's some great things within this book and this series. And it's like, I feel like maybe, yes, I do have a certain level of bias of I love it for not only its art, but what it does as characters, and the fact that, I am a role player, and I have to say, it's like, I do enjoy this quite well, but I do feel like it is a good piece of literature. And I feel like it would be a lost opportunity if you don't check this out.
Yeah, this is an amazing comic book. And what I was saying before, this is the comic book that spurred me to start reading other comic books. And willing to get involved with other comic books. Like I said, I was reading Saga, but I didn't look at Saga as a comic book. It was a book I was reading and following. And Saga did not make me want to go out and grab other comic books, because I've had bad experiences with comic books, and they do some stupid things. And so I was a regular book person. You can look over my shoulder here. I have books over there. You're not seeing the other bookshelf over here. And me about to install cabinets galore in this room to get more books in it, because that's how I am. But I love the written word, and I never needed pictures, but the Rat Queens brought to life something in me that made me want to read more, and so I did. And recently, actually, I talked to you, I bought my first comic that had nothing to do with the show. And I sent you and Woody a message, and Woody told me not to talk about it because he wants to do a show on it.
Yes, now I know which one you're talking about.
But I would have never have done that, and I believe it wholeheartedly. If Rat Queens never came into my life, I would never have pushed my experience like that. So thank you very much, Curtis, for what you've done, in both helping the gaming community feel a little bit more welcome by introducing them into the comic realm, and helping the comic realm have a real piece of tabletop gaming comic that people could be absolutely proud of, and that nobody can say anything bad about it, because I can't, and I'm here to try to pick on these books, and I can't, and it's just one of those things.
And I am going to break something that I normally don't do, because I think it's something where you should really have your own opinion and make your own bias, but I'm going to actually give this book 5 stars.
What?
Yes.
Wait, okay, what you guys don't know watching this video is Alex promised never to do this.
So it stems from a couple of things. Of one, you're either going to agree with me or feel like I'm full of total crap. And so it's like, if you agree with me, it's like, yeah, it's justified. It has 5 stars. If you don't agree with me, it's kind of like, well, you're an idiot. What do you know? You're just on some internet show, loser.
By the way, Rat Queens, the entire thing is great. You start off by picking up Volume 1. It's where I started when we did 6. We were supposed to do Volume 2 today, but man, I really wanted to get this off my chest because it's been sitting there for a while now. And, we're at the end. Alex, do you have anything to follow this up before we get on here?
So, 2 things. One, on Comic Cujin, I just did another animated video, and I'm going to be trying to do animated videos every other week on Sundays at 1 o'clock. And also, myself, Doc, Woody, Claire, and a couple of others are going to be at Emerald Comic-Con this year. booth number 1812.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. I thought it was 3 numbers, but I might be
2
wrong.
stars.
Yeah, come on down to Emerald City Comic Con, pick up a map, and find miniature dragons, and come and say hi to us. I will be there with not all my equipment, but some equipment, and asking questions and putting together a piece I hope to put on here. So, anyways, from all of us to all of you, read more comics, keep it nerdy, and live your dreams.
Bye. 4 stars.